Coming up tonight, Gamecock women's soccer are SEC champions.
Later, the Clemson Tigers suffer a major defeat on the road.
And finally, college basketball is back in full swing.
These stories and more on Palmetto State Sports.
From the Blue Ridge Mountains and through the Midlands down to the coast, there's plenty of sports highlights and moments here in South Carolina. There's only one place where you'll catch all the action. This is Palmetto State Sports.
Welcome into Palmetto State Sports. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm Violet Raftery. Thank you for joining us tonight. Gamecock women's soccer won the 2022 SEC championship on Sunday. They shut out number 1 seeded Alabama 1-0.
The victory guaranteed them a spot in the NCAA tournament, and the NCAA tournament selected their bracket on Monday. The Gamecocks enter the tournament as the number 3 seed.
USC's first game will be this Saturday at 6 p.m. South Carolina hosts Wake Forest at Stone Stadium for the first round.
The Gamecocks made it to the quarterfinals in 2021 before falling 4-1 to BYU.
Despite a number of SEC championships, Gamecock women's soccer has never won a national title. They look to pursue their first NCAA tournament championship starting with their match this weekend.
After a disappointing homecoming loss to Missouri last week, the Gamecocks are now bowl eligible after defeating Vanderbilt this past Saturday by a score of 38-27. The offense rediscovered some momentum, and Spencer Rattler had a good game under center, throwing for 186 yards and 3 touchdowns. And arguably the most impressive feat for the Gamecocks was getting the victory without star running back Marshawn Lloyd, who did not travel with the team as he was unable to play due to injury.
The defense also forced 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles in the game, which was a massive key in securing the victory. This weekend, the Gamecocks are on the road yet again as they travel to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators. Now, Clemson's football's undefeated record has officially come to an end. Last Saturday, Notre Dame beat the Tigers with a final score of 35-14. The Tigers had 8 wins on the 2022 season before recording their first loss.
Clemson has dropped 7 spots in the AP poll since the loss. They were ranked 5th going into the weekend and have now fallen to 12th, marking the first time this season that they did not place in the top 10.
The Notre Dame Fighting Irish were on the board with a touchdown in the first quarter, and the Clemson Tigers trailed the entire game after.
The Tigers will return home to face their final 3 opponents of the regular season. They'll start with Louisville this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN, then Miami the following weekend, and finally, they'll host the Gamecocks over Thanksgiving break in another rendition of the Palmetto Bowl.
Saturday's game leaves only 4 college football teams to remain undefeated. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU all hold a record of 9-0.
The Gamecocks women's basketball team has started off the season with a 70-point victory against the Buccaneers of East Tennessee State, with the final score being 101-31. The Gamecocks continued their hot streak from the end of last season and shot an impressive 52.9% from the field.
They were also great on the defensive end, holding the Buccaneers to only 10 made field goals out of 57 attempts. Last year's Player of the Year, Aaliyah Boston, had 11 points and 11 rebounds in her 20 minutes played, but it was fellow senior Zaya Cook who led the team in scoring with 17 points.
The number 1 ranked team is back in action this Friday as they take on the 17th ranked Maryland Terrapins in College Park. And it's really exciting to see them face a top 25 team. And I think it's going to be a great battle between the 2.
Oh, absolutely. I haven't been out to Colonial Life yet this season to see them play in person, but I can't wait to see them home, and I'm so excited for this season. Now, coming up, SGTV News 4 sports reporter Connor Fisher will give us a glimpse at the sports world outside the Palmetto State.
Welcome back, Gamecock fans. Sports doesn't just happen here in the Palmetto State. Here's what's going on around the country. The woes of the Carolina Panthers continued over the weekend as they were defeated 42-21 by the reigning AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati went up big early, taking a massive 35-0 lead into halftime. Carolina quarterback P.J. Walker was replaced by former starter Baker Mayfield after only completing 3 of his first 10 passes for 9 yards and 2 interceptions. Mayfield would throw 2 touchdowns in relief, but averaged less than 8 yards per pass. Bengals running back Joe Mixon had a career day with over 200 yards from scrimmage and 5 total touchdowns, 4 on the ground and 1 through the air. In terms of fantasy production, it was one of the best of the entire year by a running back. Carolina star wideout DJ Moore was 3rd on the team in receiving with just 24 yards on 2 receptions. When asked about the poor performance of his team, interim head coach Steve Wilks took responsibility, saying, quote, "We couldn't get anything done offensively, and we couldn't get off the field defensively. That's on me," end quote. Halfway through the season, the Panthers are now 2-7 and at the bottom of the NFC South. They'll have a short break this week before taking on the Atlanta Falcons for the 2nd time this season, this time at home. They'll play on Thursday Night Football tomorrow night at 8:15 p.m. on Amazon Prime. The college basketball season is finally here, giving fans the chance to watch their favorite players on the hard court. The North Carolina Tar Heels enter the year as the #1 team in the nation on both the AP poll and the coaches poll. Gonzaga, Houston, and Kentucky round out the top 4. Turnover is the name of the game in college basketball, and several important teams will be entering this year with new coaches. Of course, the most notable of these is, of course, Duke University. The Blue Devils will hit the hard court with a new leader after legendary coach, Coach K, retired at the end of last season. New head coach John Shire will now helm the preseason #7 ranked team. With highly ranked recruits Derek Lively, Kyle Filipowski, and Derek Whitehead now suiting up for the team, fans hope that the dominance will continue uninterrupted in Durham. That's the Pro Sports Rundown for this week. Coming up, one of the top recruits in South Carolina men's basketball history had his debut last night. How did he do in his first collegiate game next? I'm Connor Fisher, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back, I'm Colleen Sholtis. Freshman men's basketball star and #1 recruit Gigi Jackson made his debut last night alongside first-year head coach Lamont Paris, ending it with a win against South Carolina State. All eyes are on the new roster after the firing of head coach Frank Martin last year and 8 of last year's players, including all 5 starters, entering the transfer portal. Jackson debuted with his first career double-double, and here's what Coach Paris had to say about the 17-year-old's performance.
And so he was being active and aggressive. I want him to, but I told him the old adage that I've always known, the equation. I wasn't a mathematician, but too many jump shots equals not enough points. I think it evens out that way usually.
Standout stars besides Jackson included transfer Hayden Brown, who Coach Paris described as, quote, a winner, and Ohio State transfer Michi Johnson. Brown led the team in points after putting up 21, followed by Jackson with 18. It's a new era for Gamecock basketball, and fans are excited to see what the rest of the season holds. And as I mentioned, Gigi Jackson is just 17 years old. That is incredible for someone to be playing at the collegiate level at such a young age.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, and it's great that he got off to such a good start at such young of an age.
Absolutely. Moving on to the women's side of college basketball, Dawn Staley and the team had their season opener Monday night against East Tennessee State. However, before tip-off, the Gamecocks celebrated their 2021-2022 national title with championship rings and a banner in place at Colonial Life Arena. The rings feature 2 trophies, one for the title in 2017 and one for this past year. Each ring contains the player's name and the word net worth, which was the team slogan last season, alongside the phrase wire to wire on one side. On the other side, it says the team's record from last year, 35-2, and the Final Four logo. Finally, on the inside of the rings is an engraving of the phrase, keep the main thing, and the scores of the Final Four victories against Louisville and UConn. Along with their national championship rings, the Gamecocks also received a ring for obtaining the SEC regular season championship. And I mean, I don't know if you saw a picture of these rings, but they are sick looking. They're awesome.
I feel like every year the rings just keep getting better and better, and you know, we might see one with the DNA slogan on it after this season.
Yep. Coming up after the break, what Carolina sporting events are going on this week. Stay tuned for the...
Before we go, let's take a look at the Palmetto State calendar. Starting off with some women's basketball, the Gamecocks will travel to College Park to take on Maryland Friday at 6 p.m. The Tiger women's basketball team hosts Wofford tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Little John Coliseum. Later in the week, they will host the Richmond Spiders this Sunday at 2. The Chanticleer women's basketball team will travel to Lexington, Kentucky to take on the Wildcats this Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Moving on to the volleyball matchups for the week, the Gamecocks head to Tuscaloosa for a two-game series against the Crimson Tide on Friday at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 3 p.m. The Tigers host Miami on Friday night at 7, and then they host NC State on Sunday at 1 p.m. Coastal Carolina will host Texas State for a two-game series tomorrow at 6 p.m. and the following day at 1 p.m.
Now let's check out the two women's soccer games for this upcoming week. The Gamecocks will host the Wake Forest Demon Deacons this Saturday at 6 p.m. in the first round of the NCAA tournament. The Tigers women's soccer squad will host Vanderbilt this Friday at 3 p.m., also in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Now we'll take a look at the football matchups for this week. On Saturday, the Gamecocks will take on Florida on the road in Gainesville at 4 p.m. on the SEC Network. The Clemson Tigers will host the Louisville Cardinals at 3:30 on Saturday. The Chanticleers host Southern Miss this Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
Next up, let's look at the only men's soccer matchup this week. Clemson takes on Wake Forest in the semifinal of the ACC tournament, and action just got underway on the ACC network.
And finally, for the men's basketball matchups, we have three matchups that take place at 7 p.m. On Friday, the Gamecocks host the Clemson Tigers in a rivalry matchup. Later in the week, the Tigers will host USC Upstate this Tuesday. And the Chanticleers host Methodist also on Friday. That's all we have for tonight's edition of Palmetto State Sports.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at SGTV Sports and keep up with all of our content. Be sure to also visit us online at sgtvonline.com. For SGTV News 4 Sports, I'm Violet Raftery.
And I'm Spencer Ball. From all of us here at SGTV, have a great night, Carolina.
Forever to be.